I was with my Filipino wife for nearly 20 years. And during those 20 years, I don't think I ever really understood what type of person she actually was, or even who she was. I want to share this with you, as when I look back at everything I did, I can't see where I made a mistake. I don't remember seeing any warning signs. I don't remember missing anything like that. And if I'm being perfectly honest, I'm still shocked about what I allowed to happen for such a long time. Maybe I will be able to come to terms with what happened by telling this story. It is hard when you realize that the lady you gave so many years of your life to was not who you thought she was, not even in the slightest. She'd not been interested in me or anything about me. All she wanted was money and nothing else. I didn't see it. I missed everything, all the red flags. So I think it only right that I get into my story now. It's just a normal tale. I met her on an online dating site. We arranged to meet up at a bar in Manila. I'd retired there 2 years prior to this, and I hadn't done any serious dating. When I did meet someone, I never felt like there was someone I actually wanted to get to know. But when I met Layla, I felt different. She was a typical province girl, working in Manila, sending money home to support her family. It's also quite common, but she did have an old boyfriend that she had a child with, but they were in the care of her parents, and it was her responsibility to send money back to pay for that. It was a breath of fresh air to meet her. We went out, and it wasn't about what she could get out of me. I felt like it was more about what we could bring to the relationship for each other. At least that's how it felt. When we met, I was 50, and she was 28. I'll admit there was an age gap, but she said she didn't care. She said that the age was just a number. In a way, I felt like she was the more experienced of the two of us. She'd been around the block, been there and done that a lot of times. And when we met up for a coffee, we quickly found ourselves spending more time together in the bar playing pool. We spent the whole first day together, getting to know each other, and however cliché it might sound, she wasn't like any of the other girls in the Philippines that I spent any time with. I felt that they all wanted something. I knew Layla wanted something, but she wasn't showing it. She was working in a call center, which is a very common job in the Philippines. Her hours were not very sociable because she called for companies in America. So in the early stage of those dating days, we only really met up at the weekends because she was lucky to have 2 days off. We also met up in the days as well, but I was more of a night owl, so I appreciated the weekends we had. When I retired to the Philippines, I was lucky to have a stable income. That gave me around $3,000 a month. And I'd lived extremely well over the past 2 years in Manila on that amount of money. I rented a nice apartment, and I was never bored due to not having enough money to spend. I could nearly do anything I wanted for $3,000 in the Philippines, and I felt very lucky to be in that position. All my savings were invested to give me this income. I even sold my house back in America to invest the money, and I was happy with the decision that I made. I can remember having plans to visit other countries in the region, not only the Philippines when I moved there, but I found myself just staying in the Philippines because I liked it so much. But before I knew it, Layla was living in my apartment. She was still working and hadn't given up her job yet, but she was traveling all the way from my condo in Makati to her call center. She had to go on the jeepney to get there, and it was a stressful journey. It took her over an hour to get to work. So before long, we decided it was best for her to completely give up the job. She didn't make that much money, and I was happy to replace the money she sent to her family out of my own pocket. But I did tell her I didn't want to give her anything extra on top of this, because I'll be paying for everything. And she was happy with this, and it felt like we came to a good deal. Well, let's see. Layla moved in. If I'm being perfectly truthful, I didn't know how long it would go on for, or how serious we would get with each other. She was just different to the other girls that I had spent any time with. I got to know a few girls in my time in the Philippines, but if I knew that she would still be with me 20 years later, and I would find some things out about her that would cause our relationship to fall apart, I guess I would have probably not bothered asking her to move in. Unfortunately, we can't go back on the decisions we make, but after 2 years living in the Philippines, I was now in a serious relationship, and that meant things were going to change for me, and my life wouldn't be the same again. I was happy to make those changes, because a part of me always was looking for a connection and to have someone to go home to in the evenings. Not that I went to work, but I think that's just a figure of speech. I agreed to send $250 a month to support her child. I felt like this was a fair amount, and that was actually more than she was sending to them when she was working. She only sent the equivalent of $200, so I felt like she was thankful that I was able to help in this way. When she did move in, she did show me where she lived before, and it was a sorry place. A single bedsit with no air conditioning and a shared bathroom. I didn't want to even imagine what it was like living there, but I bet for her moving in with me to a really nice apartment was also a shock, but a positive one, and I'd like to think that I was being good to her. I do know that some people will say, out of an income of $3,000, to just willfully give away $250 is too much. But at the time I didn't see it that way. I just thought it was a way to be able to be with this girl that I'd just fallen in love with. But I would disagree when people say that if I'd stayed single, I'd have been better off financially. Perhaps knowing what I know now, I would have been, but at the time when I was single, I was going out all the time and spending a lot more money than I was when I was with Layla, so $250 was not too bad. So far so good. I was content with how things were going. Layla is a great girl. She had traits about her that were not common in the Philippines, at least amongst the girls I'd spent time with before, and that made her feel new and exciting. I felt like she put a big value on our relationship, and I appreciated the effort that she put in. I was finding myself getting more bored than I did when I was single though, and that's something that I admit. So after being in Manila together for a few months, I decided to take her to another province just to get out of the city and have a change. We went to Cebu. We stayed at a wonderful resort in Cebu, and I felt like I was getting closer to Layla. She was not demanding. We were never walking outside or in a mall and all of a sudden she'd ask for something. She never did that. She always seemed to just be happy to have me as her boyfriend, and things were going well. I had to pull the trigger and ask her to marry me. I wanted to take things further with her, and I felt like she would want the same, which she did, and we decided to get married, both excited about it. When we got back to Manila, we knew we would have to visit her province in order to meet her family. So, that way we'd get married and involve her family in the process. We were serious with each other, and it only felt right, and she happened to be from Leyte. I met lots of girls from Leyte, not sure what it is about them coming to Manila, but Leyte was one of the most beautiful places I'd ever visited. I didn't know beaches were so beautiful like the ones on that island, and it made me question why she ever left for Manila in the first place. Of course, it was down to money and her ability to get a better job there, but what I saw around me was the most picturesque and idyllic scenes I'd ever seen. And I'd been to a lot of countries around the world. The best beaches are in the Philippines. There's no denying that. No one can argue against it. If you want to show me an example of a better beach than one in the Philippines, and I'd ask you to try to show that to me, but I bet you can't. One thing that did shock me was just how basic her family's house was. It was made of corrugated tin, and it was on stilts above what looked like a swamp. The smell was horrendous, and her mother and father lived in that house, as well as her younger brother and sister, and her child. Her child didn't know her as well as her parents. She always doted on him and treated him when she went, but I felt sorry for her in the fact that she didn't have a close relationship with her son. It was great meeting the family, and they were happy for us to get married, not like they had much choice, but the fact that we were happy with it, I did feel like that meant something, at least for me. I had a wonderful time on Leyte. It's a big island, but I had such a wonderful time there that I even thought about moving there at some point, but I didn't let it slip that that's what I was thinking about. It was great to leave and head back to Manila, get back into a more modern and futuristic city where I could actually get everything I wanted. And we got married a few months after getting back, after sorting out everything. And I felt like I could finally solidify my stay in the Philippines. We weren't just there anymore, if that made any sense. I had a Filipino wife, and I honestly felt like I had a bigger connection to the Philippines than I did before. I felt good for what that was worth. Things did change when we married, in a way I wasn't expecting. Before we were married, Layla never asked for anything from me. She was happy and content just being able to go out and eat with me, to be treated to little things every now and then. But when we were married, I could feel like she was more comfortable, but not comfortable in a positive way, comfortable in a negative way. And it can't have been 2 months of us being together when she asked me to send some money back to her family. I had no problem with the $250 I was sending every month, but now all of a sudden, it was 10,000 pesos. I can't even remember what it was for, and it wasn't a lot of money, so I did end up giving it to her. I told her that this has to be a one-off. We've already come to an agreement. But I feel like because we were married, she now felt emboldened to try to get more out of me. Perhaps I'm just being negative, but that's what it felt like. She did say that she would promise she wouldn't ask again, but she was only asking because it was an emergency involving her mum. I regret agreeing, sending that money. Lo and behold, 2 months later, and the family wants more money. Always about the family, but this time it was for 25,000 pesos. I just swallowed my pride and sent it and hoped it wouldn't happen again. It wasn't that I couldn't afford it, it was just that I thought we were in a genuine relationship and that she loved me, and if she did, she wouldn't ask for it. I didn't want a relationship based on what I provided for her family. On the other side of it, though, our relationship was going great. I was happy that we were living together in Manila. I thought we were building a great future together, but again, the problem with her family kept asking for money, and I kept falling for it. I didn't send them money. Things might not go well in terms of me and Layla, and how she acted around me. And because I came out of a shocking divorce back in the States, I couldn't bear the thought of having a miserable woman next to me ruining my life. I'd had that for too long, and I did not want it again. I needed a happy, enthusiastic, and excitable woman to provide me with the life I needed. I suppose that's why I ended up spending so much money all the time, because I didn't want what the alternative was. I wasn't brave enough to take it. It wasn't causing me problems by sending this money. By this point, there had been so many requests I can't even name them. I could afford it, but I felt like Layla was actually starting to take advantage of me for the benefit of her family. If only I knew what I knew later. It happens time and time again. Before we got married, she didn't do this, and that's why I got married to her. But when I got married to her, she changed, and then she started asking for money. I had a good friend of mine who was also married to a Filipina. He always used to say how his wife's family were really hard-working and never asked for anything. I don't know if he was telling the truth or somewhere in the middle, but Layla, as soon as she got married to me, she changed. But we persevered, and life went on, and I overlooked the shocking loss of money because I was enjoying the time I was spending with her. But it didn't feel worth the amount I was paying. Sometimes the requests would die down. For a few years they didn't come anymore, and I was starting to feel like marrying her was a good decision. We'd spend most of our time in Manila. Every 3 months or so we'd go to a nice resort in one of the provinces, and we were just living life and having a good time. We'd go and visit her family in Leyte, not that often, but she wanted to see her child. I even offered for her child to come and live with us in Manila, but she said she didn't want that. She would prefer her child to have the same upbringing that she had. Secretly, I was delighted that that's what she wanted. Things were going great, life is moving forwards, then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, a new request came in. This time it was for a lot of money, not the little 10 or 20,000 pesos it was before. Apparently, their family wanted 200,000 pesos. I can remember looking at Layla and saying that things are going great for such a long time, and we'd already talked about this. I'm sending $250 a month. Why all of a sudden are you asking me for this? It was something to do with buying a small piece of land next to where their house was. It was only small, but because the house was built on stilts over a swamp, where they walked into the house was over someone's land, something like that. And she sold it in a way like it would be really beneficial for her and her family. So I foolishly gave 200,000 pesos, just like that. It did leave a sour taste in my mouth, but what was I going to do apart from stomach it and put on a brave face? No more money was asked for a while, and apart from her wanting money for her family, there was nothing wrong with our relationship. I was sort of happy, and I think Layla was happy as well. I was so fortunate to be living in the Philippines. It was my dream to retire there for such a long time, and there I was, having a great time, with a wonderful wife. But every time I thought about when she asked for money from me, it did make me feel down. By this time, I was also giving Layla a monthly allowance. We'd been together for a long years, and I thought it only right to give her something as well. So I gave her $250 a month. With that, she was able to go out and buy things she needed without asking me, and I felt like it was a fair compromise, showing the fact that she stayed with me for such a long time. That added on to the $250 a month I was giving to her family to replace the income that she used to work and send back. We lived great for another 2 years. I think the highlight of those 2 years was a trip we took to Bohol. We stayed in a delightful resort, and it was just one of the best vacations I had in my life. Layla was acting perfectly, like a dream really, and I was so happy with everything that was happening. We'd been together for 10 years at this point, and then all of a sudden, her child was of age to go to university, and I needed to pay for that. Couple of 100,000 pesos. This wasn't budgeted for or talked about beforehand, but it was just expected of me, and that really hurt. The fact that she just expected me to pay it. No, I'm really sorry for asking you, can you help with this? It was nothing like that. It was like, oh, my child needs to go to university, and you need to pay for it. This is how much it's going to cost. She was just so demanding, and I suppose we spent 10 years together, but even still, she treated me like I was a money machine. I stomached it and handed over the money, anything to keep the peace, but I wasn't liking that yet again. I'd been asked for money. I didn't want to be asked for money. It was so annoying and upsetting to me, but every time I was asked, I wasn't strong enough to say no. And I know that's my own fault, and it's just part of how things were. Another few years went on, and I'm thinking finally things have settled down. A child's already left university and got their own job. She was getting older. I was getting much older. But her parents were getting older as well. And she came to me and said they needed a new house. I couldn't understand it. This is a lady I've been with for nearly 15 years at this point, and she just threw it out of nowhere. Why was it my responsibility to buy a new house for her family? I was told it would only be about $10,000 only to build this shack-style house that they wanted. I've seen where they lived before, and I suppose I did feel bad that they lived in such bad conditions, but I didn't want to reduce the quality of my own retirement just to pay for this. This was the first time I declined, so I know I can't afford to give them out the money. I told her I can't afford it. I can't build a house for your parents. Expectedly, she started sulking. She looked miserable and bored and angry even. I suppose it's all women around the world that act in that way when they don't get what they want. But a few hours later, I had to relent, and I ended up giving her the money. She said she sent it back to her parents like she did every time, and they were going to build a house with it. Very good, I thought. Let's hope she doesn't ask for more money. More time goes on, and we're just living like we did before. I thought we were happy. Layla seemed to be happy, and we go out in the evenings, spend a lot of time at home, and go to resorts on the islands when we could. About 2 years after I sent the money for the house, we were going to go and visit her family for the first time. For a long time. It had been ages. Layla had been once without me, but we felt it was time to go for a visit. We hadn't seen them for such a long time. Layla didn't like to fly, so it was a bus and a ferry. A lot of days travelling to get there, but I suppose it was fun and a bit of an adventure. When we arrived at her parents' house, I was looking forward to see this new house that was built 2 years ago with my money. But when we got there, it was the same house as before. I think she'd forgotten about it. "Where's this new house?" I asked her. I could see the look on her face, like the realization that she'd forgotten all about it. And she said, Oh, I don't know. One of the beauties of the Philippines is that people can speak English. Now, granted, her mother and father couldn't speak English that well, but I asked them what happened to the new house, and they looked at me like, "What are you talking about?" I talked about the money that I sent for the house 2 years ago. They didn't look at me, they looked at Layla, and quickly said, "Oh, we just fixed this one instead." I just found out that Layla was stealing money from me. Every time she asked for money for her family, she was actually keeping it for herself. I found out not long after that there were lots of people in her village that lived close to where she came from, where her mother and father lived, and some of them didn't like her because she had a foreign husband and had better things. And I was speaking to one of the people in the village over a couple of beers that I bought, and the guy said Layla's new land is beautiful, isn't it? "What land?" I asked. He looked at me like, "Why don't you know?" But I went and I asked Layla immediately, and it turns out the money I sent to her, or gave to her for her family, she'd saved and bought some land with it. Should I feel bad about that? At least she invested it and didn't waste it, but she went completely behind my back. I would have preferred to have given her the money to buy the land instead of giving it her for all the other excuses she came up with, and I asked her what was real and what wasn't. And she said the only thing that was real was the university fee for her child. Everything else she bought the land with. How much was the land? She didn't want to tell me, but I knew full well it wasn't everything that I sent, and it turned out she'd been spending my money and other things as well, and she'd been lying to get the money from me. That was a shocking realization. I'd spent 20 years with her at this point, and for a big portion of those 20 years she'd been lying to me to get money out of me. I didn't know what to do about that. I felt awful. Couldn't believe that she'd been so disrespectful towards me after everything I did for her. And all this came to a head when we were with her family, and they could see I wasn't happy. We cut our trip short and went back to Manila, and she could tell how upset I was. She couldn't see a problem with it. She just said that she needed some money and she thought that it would be better if she said it was for her family. And I would give it to her in that way, but that was far from the truth. By that point I was in my 70s, and I didn't want to have to find somebody else. She was older as well, and would be difficult for her to find someone. So at the end of the day, I just said never mind. I still have my income coming in, but she didn't see it like that. She saw it as me disrespecting her for questioning her motives, and things went down very quickly from there. In a few months, we'd already separated. That was a year ago when that happened, and I can't believe just how disingenuous some people can be in the Philippines. I suppose I had 20 good years out of it, but I did facilitate the purchase of a piece of land in her province and give her money over and above what she should have had. When I found out that she built a small house on the land in her province, my worst fears were realized. She'd saved a lot of the money I'd given to her to build this house. The fact that she'd been so dishonest, instead of just saying, "Can we build a house?" I'd have probably gone along with it just to keep her happy. But she went behind my back and basically stole my money for 20 years. I hope this acts as a warning to just show how conniving people can be from the Philippines. You've got to be so careful. 20 years of my life I gave to that girl, and tens of thousands of dollars over and above what we'd agreed on in the early stages of our relationship. What a nightmare it was. But I'm over it now, and I make it my mission to warn other guys of the same problems that could happen to them. I live in Manila and I love it here. And I do go to the expat bars all the time, and every time I see a guy with his Filipina girlfriend by his side, when she leaves the table I always say, "Be careful of that one, you never know." Most of the time they have a laugh, but I wasn't laughing after I found out what I did. I'd never trust a girl again, especially a Filipina. You've got to be careful, guys.